Imagine if we went back in time and gave an NFL team a cheat sheet for the draft, telling them exactly who the best players are in the position they are drafting for the first and second rounds, occasionally giving them a little nudge when it comes to free agency and who they shouldn't let go. What would those teams look like now if they were able to always play the draft perfectly? That's what I'm here to try and answer. Today we're looking at the Eagles, and although they've got some correct picks in here, there's a lot of changes and a lot of very interesting ones, and I've called a couple of audibles when it comes to certain free agency moves, etc. So plenty going on in this one. But starting out at left tackle, nothing different here with Jason Peters. But then at left guard, back in 2011 with the 23rd overall pick, the Eagles took Danny Watkins at offensive guard. And that year, a guy who was a guard at the time is a center now, but we're going to play in the guard position anyway. Rodney Hudson was available there in that position. And now, of course, the Eagles actually start Alan Barber there, and Alan Barber is good. You could even possibly argue he is a better guard than Rodney Hudson might be, as Hudson, of course, is now a center. But Hudson only has to be better than Danny Watkins, which he is. Alan Barber would either be a backup or ahead of him, but for the sake of this, we're going to have Hudson here. Then our actual center is Jason Kelce, our right guard Brandon Brooks, and then in 2013 with the 4th overall pick, the Eagles took Lane Johnson at right tackle. Without a doubt the correct pick. Lane Johnson is one of the top 5 right tackles in my opinion in the NFL, so very few people could have been a better pick than him anyway. Then at tight end, we've talked about the 2013 tight end class before. In the second round with the 35th pick, the Eagles took Zach Ertz. And I did call that the correct pick. I do think that was a very good pick. However, I cannot resist reuniting families, so Travis Kelce is joining his brother Jason on the team. So we're going to say Travis Kelce instead of Zach Ertz, although Zach Ertz, like I said, probably was actually the correct pick. And as I always say, that doesn't necessarily mean Zach Ertz is better than Travis Kelce, it just means the gap isn't big enough where we can say the Eagles were wrong to take Zach Ertz. He's still a very good player. In 2013, with the tight ends, you couldn't really have gone wrong. Then on to the wide receivers, and in 2015, with the 20th overall selection, the Eagles took Nelson Agholor at wide receiver. Stephon Diggs probably would have been a better choice. They're very similar 40 times, so they're both fast. They can both stretch the field. Then for our second wide receiver, I'm making a call back to the past, quite far back to be honest, to say don't let this guy go in free agency. DeSean Jackson, I'm saying they should have kept, and now mainly because there is talk now of him possibly coming back to Philadelphia, and therefore I felt I would make the call and say they should have kept him. If there wouldn't have been any of that conversation, I may have thought twice about it, but they did need another good receiver, and DeSean Jackson is one of the guys they let go. Jeremy Maclin, I'm not as inclined to say they should have kept. DeSean Jackson, with the conversation being that he might come back anyway, I thought we'll say they should keep him, especially as they're also interested in Brandon Cooks. They're basically trying to replace that kind of player. And for our third and final wide receiver, in 2014 42nd overall pick, the Eagles took Jordan Matthews, and that was the correct pick in my opinion. There are 3 types of wide receivers on a very basic level, and of course they overlap. Possession receivers, speed receivers, and slot receivers. Jordan Matthews is a speed receiver. The few guys behind him that could have been still available, Allen Robinson, Jarvis Landry, are more possession receivers. 40 times not even close to Jordan Matthews. The only guy with a similar time there, and obviously that's what the Eagles were drafting for, it's what they've always drafted for in this position, Quincy Enunwa. So if you think Quincy Enunwa from the Jets is better than Jordan Matthews, they could have picked him. If not, then Jordan Matthews was the correct pick. Then on to the running backs, and this is where I've made the biggest call. And I know the implications it has, and I am going to talk about these implications, but I am reversing Chip Kelly's most brain-boggling trade of his entire tenure here. I am not trading LaShawn McCoy for Kiko Alonso, who's not on the team anyway. In this world, LaShawn McCoy remains an Eagle. Now, of course, this does mean that the Eagles can't trade Kiko Alonso and Byron Maxwell to the Dolphins, swap first-round picks, and that earlier first-round pick is what they used to trade up to get Carson Wentz. However, I'm sure even without the jump spaces, they could probably still have traded up for maybe another draft pick if necessary. I'm going to go and stretch it that far because I really think LaShawn McCoy should still be on this team. Carson Wentz at quarterback, he's got Stephon Diggs, DeSean Jackson, and Jordan Matthews to throw to. This would be a whole different story compared to last year. And last year wasn't bad either. So on to the defense. At free safety, Rodney McLeod, and then at strong safety, Malcolm Jenkins. No changes there whatsoever. However, we come on to the linebackers, and it's almost all changes. Well, there's only 3 positions, 2/3 of them are changes. It counts as almost all. In 2012, with the 46th overall pick, the Eagles selected Michael Kendricks. All in all, not a bad pick. Zach Brown, however, I think would have been a better selection, and thanks to Ultimate Team for not recognizing Zach Brown as an inside linebacker, helps us out in building this team. A middle linebacker is still Jordan Hicks, who we've been swapping for a bunch of people on different teams, and wasn't even a 1st or 2nd round pick for the Eagles. And then at left outside linebacker, in 2014, with the 26th overall pick, the Eagles selected Marcus Smith at outside linebacker. They picked the wrong Smith. They could have had Telvin Smith instead, and look at those linebackers, especially in their new 4-3. Zach Brown, Jordan Hicks, Telvin Smith, not a bad group whatsoever. Also, I did forget to add this guy. As you can see, backup strong safety here. In 2011, 54th overall pick, the Eagles took Jarrett at safety. Denoris Cersei, probably a better pick there. And with that, we move on to the cornerbacks. So our number 1 cornerback would be Leodis McKelvin. But then for our number 2 position, in 2015, with the 47th overall pick, the Eagles took Eric Rowe, who of course now plays for the New England Patriots anyway. They could have taken Ronald Darby in that position. And then for the 3rd cornerback, Nolan Carroll. And that's not a bad group there, to be honest. And now the defensive line, already strong, it just gets stronger. Brandon Graham would still be the right end. Benny Logan would still be our 2nd defensive tackle. And then in 2012, with the 12th overall pick, the Eagles selected Fletcher Cox at defensive tackle. And of course, that was the right pick. And then to finish off this line, in 2012 as well, with the 59th overall pick, the Philadelphia Eagles selected Vinnie Curry at defensive end. Could have had Olivier Vernon, who obviously now plays for the Giants, but started out with the Dolphins, so a now divisional rival could have been on the Eagles all along. And these are the Philadelphia Eagles, a crazy strong defense. The young Carson Wentz, who they still managed to trade up for even without the swap pick with the Dolphins, surrounded by absolutely no end of talent, blocked for not just by a very good offensive line, but depth with guys like Alan Barber still on the team. And those are the Eagles that, with all these changes that we've had to undo and call for, that really could have never come together without the power of time travel.